next door. So I'm not going to go insane anymore. Although the black flies are terrible. Everyone talks about how bad the mosquitoes in the Amazon, and that's not even it, man. It's the black flies are just evil. Um, so happy 420, happy bicycle day. I'm totally missed that. I can't believe it. I just didn't notice it was coming. I have too much on my mind, I guess, and it slipped me. Or otherwise, I would have done a video about Dr. Hoffman, who I think was an incredible person. There are a lot of conspiracy theories about how LSD was created by the CIA. A lot of people think Timothy Leary, who I'm making a video about because he was a gangster, and really one of the biggest influences on my life, and totally should be an influence on everyone now. I mean, I think a lot of what Leary had to say is kind of what's lost on uh, the majority of people um, in the psychedelic movement now. I mean, people are really becoming sheep-like and obedient, subservient, homogenous. Like the counterculture that I knew and loved seems to have disappeared. We had these wild rebel outlaw lunatics with this crazy, beautiful psychedelic humor, and now, I mean, you have like normies that get high, and there's like they're not that interesting. It's just kind of like I've seen people making psilocybin videos, and it's like watching the girl at the Geico counter describe psilocybin. I mean, and I'm not trying to be down on people, but I can't help it. It's depressing. I mean, I'm all about individuality and personal expression, and it seems like herd conformity pressure, even on people in the counterculture, is absurdly powerful at this juncture. And I think that cannabis is one of the things that can really help with that. I've got a long history with cannabis. I used to be a much bigger fan of it than I am today, but I don't think it's the plant or the medicine that I have gotten weary of. I was in the industry, and we'll get to why that sucked shortly. But I want to talk about the terpenes. I want to talk about the different cannabinoids. It's been years and years and years since I've thought about any of this stuff. But in the interim, there's been a tremendous amount of research done. When I kind of left the scene, it was just kind of around the well, I don't know. It was a few years after the medical marijuana thing started to really pick up. And I left California pretty much because of the passing of the recreational marijuana laws. I'm sure a lot of you guys already know the history, so I don't really want to talk too much about that, except that I think that it really is worthy of remembering how it is that cannabis became illegal in the first place. There's this crazy misconception with not only psychedelics, but also with marijuana, that the government was misguided and that people thought that these things were harmful, and that they made you insane and all of these things. And the truth is that just like the researchers in the late 50s and early 1960s on psychedelics that said to the government, these are cures for every mental health condition known to man, oftentimes in a single dose. And because of that, because they were told these are safe and they help people, and you can't really make a lot of money on it, the government said send people with guns to shut this shit down and put people in prison if they touch these compounds. That's what really happened. And also, the CIA had been doing research with psychedelics since the 1940s, and they knew that it deconditioned people, that it restored neuroplasticity, so that the billions and billions of dollars and man hours that they've spent on propaganda and indoctrination would be just wiped clean. And that's not what the CIA is looking for. So the same sort of thing happened with cannabis, only it was not just about oppressing the evolution of consciousness and keeping a counterculture under control. It was racist, and it wasn't just racist, it was also industrial, which is like always the case. The Babylon power structure, the elite, whatever you want to call them, they love to be able to kill two birds with one stone. And so marijuana was associated very largely with the Mexican population and black jazz musicians. who were also doing a lot of heroin at the time. But heroin, because it was coming from Bayer aspirin. Did you guys know that? Bayer aspirin, Bayer, I guess, it's not Bayer aspirin, the Bayer pharmaceutical double dabbers. Man, dabs can be just too brutal, man. I've just really just put myself in a coma with those things one too many times. Although if it's the right strain, it's actually not leaves you very clear. It doesn't impair your cognition so much. I always appreciated that. Uh, well, okay, so we're talking about the prohibition. Hearst, yeah, that's probably at the right temperature, which is actually higher than the evaporation temperature of THC because tetrahydrocannabivarinol uh, is a stimulant that can be used to help with mental fatigue. And man, I'm gonna get to my THCV story. Certain strains that are really high in THCV. Alaskan Ice is the one that I'm going to talk about. But if you do find, it's only I think Indonesian land races that have a lot of it. Of course, at this point, things have been interbred so much that I'm sure you'll find it popping up, everywhere. But I mean, Alaskan Ice is like hella powerful and it smells crazy. And it's a pain in the ass to grow. That's the only thing about it. But it's a heavily sativa, tropical sativa. Um, um, Anyways, let's not get too off track. I'll get to those stories in a minute. But so what happened is the paper magnate Hearst, William Randolph Hearst, they had discovered that you could make all the paper from hemp, and so he felt threatened. And then they realized that it was an opportunity for them also to throw black people and Mexicans under the bus. So two birds, one stone. That's the real reason that pot is illegal. Nobody ever thought that any of this stuff really was that damaging to anyone. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen this shit, but there's a movie, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. People think that this is made up, like they made this up for the film. It's not. That was a real movie where the guy's like, well, they added this extra scene where he's like, you can tell the marijuana addict by the semen stains on his pants from constantly jacking off when he can't find a rape victim. And the guy's like that super white guy, like 1950s voice and stuff. But they pretty much were that bad. Fear and Loathing, man. But they were that bad. They said that marijuana would people would look for people to run over in their cars after they smoke it, a lust for murder, and it provokes Negroes to rape white women and all this stuff. I mean, they were hella scaring the shit out of white people. Like in Middle America, like be afraid. Oh my God, one of the best ones, my favorite, man, is the only accurate thing that they said in these marijuana propaganda movies was the jazz musicians use it to slow the beat down so that they can fit more notes in. It's like, that actually isn't too far from the truth, but LSD is way better for that. I don't know if you guys have seen my San Pedro video where I talk about and I've done this with acid before too, where your relationship to time is so different that you just have all this time to think about every note. I mean, you can decide exactly the shape, the texture, how you're going to articulate it, because I'm a guitar player, so it's not like we're just pushing a button. And you actually can put these really subtle nuances into what you're doing. And so it's true, LSD or San Pedro or whatever, any psychedelic, including marijuana, gives you this crazy relationship with time so that you can improvise better. And actually, there's on Netflix right now, there's a documentary about marijuana and jazz musicians. I can't remember the name of it at the moment. But that's what these old jazz musicians are saying. He's like Duke Ellington, what's the guy with the big cheeks, Louis Armstrong. They said Louis Armstrong just smoked pot all day, every day, his whole life, And the guy said one thing we all knew is that the people that smoked cannabis were better players than the ones who didn't. And it's true, man. I can hear, and I've never been wrong ever in my life. I can hear if musicians have ever done LSD or not, like that, instantly. And and I'm not saying high on LSD at the time. I can tell if they've ever done it. I can tell if you've ever done LSD as soon as I see you. I mean, the change that comes into people, there's some kind of fundamental connection to something that just isn't there in people that have spent an entire time in their normal consciousness. It's absolutely true, and it's more pronounced with psychedelics than marijuana. But you guys probably even know what I'm talking about. We can see each other. You know, it could just be like posture or gait or who knows, man. But yeah, and especially musicians. Anytime I see a band that does not take psychedelics, I'm in the audience like, the music is lifeless and it's just they're recreating their record note for note. It's like, what is this stupid shit? I'll stay home and listen to a CD. Psychedelic music is always like exponentially more powerful than that made. But psychedelics are not the topic of this. Let's try to stay on track. Okay, so the reasons for outlawing marijuana, as I was saying, were surprise, surprise, industrial and racist. It had nothing to do with protecting anyone. And yeah, I mean, elevator musicians probably aren't high on acid either. Uh, and then, after the prohibition, the original prohibition, when the hippies came along, the government knew what psychedelics were. They knew what was going to happen if Leary was successful in turning on all of the people in the United States. And, I know people have kind of forgotten about Timothy Leary. So in case you are one of these people that has only heard the conspiracy theory rumors or whatever, Leary was not a CIA agent. He was not, he was definitely sincere. I don't see how anyone could watch like a 10-minute interview with this guy and not realize he was a certified IQ tested genius. Just absolutely extraordinarily brilliant, and none of us would be sitting here talking right now if it wasn't for Dr. Leary. I mean, what that guy did was completely insane. He was like 60 years old the first time he took a psychedelic, and he's a Harvard staff member, a psychologist or a psychiatrist, I think a psychologist by training. Then he starts going on the news, and they're like, say, Dr. Leary, is LSD bad? And he's like, I think instead of judging your children when they come home high on LSD, you should turn on with them and see what it is that they're learning about and see what you can discover yourself. It was just like people's heads were exploding because back then, I mean, if you think people are indoctrinated now, try going back to 1959. I mean, there was just a sea of zombies in the United States, like skirts better be below your knees. There better not be any black people in the cafe. You know what I mean? Like that. It was really like that. And here comes this guy telling them all that they need to not only smoke pot, but drop acid with their kids and shit, and he's on television. They must have been just so goddamn insane. So, so they knew that if Leary was successful in convincing America to drop LSD and smoke marijuana, that they were not going to have this mindless automaton masses that they could just, you know what I mean? Like people were going to actually snap out of it, start questioning their religions, start questioning their indoctrination. Their brains were going to be returned to a more neuroplastic state. Neurogenesis was going to be catalyzed, and they were going to be out of business. So, it is always, basically, long story short, the drug laws have always been about oppression. And that oppression leads to a very sterile, bland, boring. I mean, I wouldn't care if it wasn't for that, side effect of this kind of oppression. I mean, I would care about the damage done to people. But I wouldn't mind a homogenized society if it was dope. You know what I mean? But it's not. When people are deprived of these experiences for whatever reason, they become very bland. And I mean, it's not just that. I think it's also the monotony of industrial life or just the modern paradigm doesn't really inspire a lot of colorful, wild, lusty, passionate. It's just, I mean, you guys know what it was like pre-1960s United States, horrific. Okay, so real quick, let's talk about terpenes, I guess. Let's just jump onto some of the benefits of this stuff now that we've talked about the politics and the tragedies and awful, bland white people and whatnot. So terpenoids are a really interesting class of compounds for a number of reasons. And this is actually, let's rewind a little bit. Let's talk about the origin, the Dogon tribe. I'm not saying this is true because no one knows. But there's a tribe in Africa called the Dogons or the Dogons. And They claim to have received the first cannabis plant from a race of aliens from Sirius B. And I have personal experiences with. You can watch my ayahuasca and Star Tribes, I think is called that video. So I'll talk about this. Um, but they claim that aliens came and gave them this cannabis plant, and it is the most biologically sophisticated, most complex plant on Earth. I mean, it's a crazy plant. If you've ever seen trichomes under a microscope, if you haven't, go look it up. Uh, I mean, it's crystals all over it. Pot plants are just insane. And so the terpenes that occur in marijuana that are produced by those trichomes, and along with the rest of the resins in the glands, or the rest of the resins in the plant, the THC, and I think there's 113 at least, or 114 114 different compounds, or cannabinoids, specifically cannabinoids. There are other compounds as well, including the terpenes. We're getting back off track here, though. But the Dogons claim that they received the cannabis plant from these aliens, and that wouldn't be that compelling if it wasn't for this fact. The Dogons also have a star chart of a star system 7 star systems away that we only know about because the Hubble telescope found it some decade ago or so. So what in the actual fuck is going on with that? They're like, yeah, we met aliens and we have an accurate star chart of a star system 7. And of course, anthropologists dispute this and they say, well, they had contact with somebody in the 80s or something that, they could have gotten a hold of. But of course, the squares are going to say this kind of shit. You know what I mean? There's a rational explanation for everything, and it's like aliens aren't a rational explanation. In my opinion, it's actually like more insane to think that there have never been any aliens that have visited this planet, in my opinion, than to think that there may have been. I mean, I think also the fact that cannabis is so much more advanced biologically than any of the other plants on Earth kind of suggests that it might have been from somewhere else. I mean, who knows? But that is the Dogon origin story, along with their along with their star chart. Do me a favor too, guys. Hit the like button, share, subscribe. We have been demonetized, so if you appreciate this content, you can click the link to join our Patreon and join our secret streams. The last one was on the full card of the tarot, which it's an incredible thing. You don't use the tarot for divination. In my world, it's sort of like a map of consciousness, and because everything is fundamentally consciousness, it is sort of like a dynamic map. And so it's really, I mean, it could be a tool for divination. I'm not saying it's not, but I'm saying that just in terms of the contemplation of symbolism and the fact that it was created by adepts somewhere in some mystery school, there's a lot of arguing about the actual origins of the tarot deck. But the Fool, for example, the first card, it's innocence. It applies to the beginning of a human being as well as a period in history. Anyways, you guys join. You can see all the secret streams in the past too if you join up. Otherwise, you can make a one-time contribution to the PayPal or Zelle email. Okay, so we talked about the Dogon, and so now we should talk about terpenes, because they're a really interesting class of compounds. And so people have noticed that marijuana smells like all kinds of other things. Mangoes, limes, pine trees, dog shit, cat piss. What am I missing? I mean, come on, guys. There's mint. And the actual reason for that is that terpenes are the same. If it's, let's see, I have a list here somewhere. It's myrcene is the one that makes it smell like mangoes. It's the most common terpene found in the cannabis plant, and it actually is the same compound that makes a mango smell like a mango. So the reason that these plants, like I used to grow this lemon skunk that smelled like a bag of shaved lemon peels. I mean, it was perfect, incredible. And I actually didn't know all this at the time when I was, I think I may have actually researched it because of that particular strain. And the entourage effect also is important when we're talking about terpenes, because they all have medical uses. Some of them have psychological applications, but there's the entourage effect, which you could also just think of as like catalyzing the way that if you take DMT orally, it doesn't work. You need harmala alkaloids from Syrian rue or ayahuasca. In the case of cannabinoid or terpenes and THC, there is often, or probably with all of them, an entourage effect where they work together to synergize some kind of effect. And so myrcene is the one that has a relaxing analgesic and used against psychological and muscular fatigue. And this is where this gets really like, if you are serious about being a medical marijuana provider, you need to know about every compound in the cannabis plant that you're working with. I'm sorry, the sun's in my eyes again. I hate to depersonalize and be all weird and goony, but I mean, it's a pot live stream. I should douche it up a little bit, right? I mean, or wait, we're trying to redeem the image, so maybe I shouldn't douche it up. It's funny, so I'm going to. Because, okay, remember what I was saying about tetrahydrocannabivarinol, THCV, or THVC, THCV, I guess. If you're looking specifically for fighting muscular and psychological fatigue, then you're going to want to pair that with a plant, a Thai landrace strain or an Indonesian strain that has a lot of THCV, so that you double down on the myrcene. If you don't want to make someone groggy, if you have a patient that has chronic fatigue syndrome, for example, or they are chronically obese, or they have fatty liver, and so they have problems with fatigue and concentration, you're not going to want to give them something like black domina, which is like a frontal lobotomy, because it is nothing but cannabinoids and and terpenes that cause couch lock. Black strains, and actually, while I'm thinking about it, there used to be. We'll get to CBD for sure. We're going to talk about a ton of these until my battery runs out or whatever. We may not even get to all my crazy outlaw stories and medical marijuana, which was extremely disappointing experience. I can tell you first rate, in case we don't get to that most people in the medical marijuana industry are completely full of shit. They don't care about medicine. They don't believe that it's medicine. They don't want it to be medicine. They're just there to make money, and they're all lying to you. It was one of my like big awakenings in life, like the naivety, was to get involved in that industry and actually discover how full of shit everyone was. It was, but I mean, that's not true of everyone. I mean, you can tell I'm sincere because obviously I've studied all this stuff, right? So limonene is the one that is going to make the cannabis smell like limonene, and they works together well with the phytocannabinoids THCA, CBDA, CBG, CBC, and so this is used a lot for gastric reflux and heartburn. Pinene is the one that makes them smell like pine trees, and that is anti-cancer, according to a study done in China. Along with THC, has actually been shown to attack cancer cells directly. So that's just my advice. If you have a health problem that you are trying to address, you want to think about not only which terpenes are going to have some kind of efficacy for treating that specific problem, but you also want to look at the types of side effects and also the ratios of different cannabinoids that are in different strains, so that you can pair terpenes with cannabinoids. And you also want to watch out for bad advice, because I have seen some, one of the things that people like to do when they don't know what the fuck they're talking about is to talk anyways. And this is a great example. THCV is an appetite suppressant. It may help with diabetes. It stimulates bone growth. But if you give it to someone that's having a panic attack, like it says on this page right here, they're going to freak out and maybe kill themselves or something. I mean, it is the most, it's amphetamine. So you really have to be careful. People just don't care. Trust me, I was a medical marijuana provider, and I'll actually tell you what happened. when in Colorado, when the medical marijuana law was passed, they had a meeting with the city council where they wanted growers and uh, dispensary owners and all these people to come, and the cops too. It was crazy at that time to sit down with these cops in uniform, and in the what do you call the top cop in the town or whatever, the sheriff was there, the mayor and stuff. And I'm like a 21. No. I was almost 30, I think. Like lifelong outlaw, like from the East Coast, where I mean, the town that I grew up in, there were more cops per capita than any other town in the United States, and it was right outside of Washington D.C., which at the time was the murder capital of the world. So cops were the enemy, man, and sitting there talking about growing pot and stuff to them, it was just a mind blower. But I was sitting with all the dispensary owners and stuff, and we're talking about, they're like, should we allow felons? And I was like, well, I'm a felon, and for something stupid, it was half of a painkiller that I had a prescription for, and I got a public pretender, a public defender, a fake lawyer, and he talked me into just pleading guilty. And I could have just gone to the doctor and gotten proof of a prescription and got it thrown out. I mean, that's another story. But that was basically my, it's like, it's not like I robbed someone or something, and I don't, it's not. What about all the people that are felons because of marijuana? You're going to exclude them. They're the people that know what they're doing here. That's not good for this industry, unfortunately, and it's got nothing to do with ethics, right? So we went around and had this round table discussion, and as we were leaving, I got this funny feeling about everyone, and I said, God, this is so dumb. Medical marijuana is just a pile of bullshit. It's not good for anything. And every single one of the dispensary owners started laughing, and they're like, hell no, it's not. It's such a fucking joke, but we're going to make a fuck ton of money. All of them, all like 12 of them, all laughing and agreeing. And my heart just sank because I was studying all this stuff I'm talking about, all the terpenoids. I knew all of the different cannabinoids and what they do, and all these different strains. I had experimented with growing hundreds of strains. All of my patients were legitimate patients. I had one guy that had got drunk, drove his car off of a 60-foot cliff, and he couldn't turn his head. He's like this all the time. Another guy that had cancer, and unfortunately he died. We got pretty close, and I couldn't really do it because these people are very, very sick, and they don't have jobs, and they smoke a lot of pot, and so they were constantly wanting me to just give them on credit. I couldn't say no, and so I had this huge overhead, and I'm just like giving all the weed away, and these guys are all just laughing about how it's not really medicine, and how they're gonna make a shit ton of money, and I'm just going like, man, you motherfuckers. And it was even worse when I got to California. I mean, it was really cool in a way, and I'm kind of sad that it's over. And I think there was a time when it wasn't as bad as it was by the time I got there. But on the one hand, you had like several counties full of people that had never had a day job. They had never punched a clock. Like, they didn't use banks. And I've been like that since I was a kid too, and not because I grew up in a place where people grow pot, but there were like third, fourth, fifth generation pot growers that they had been free every day of their life for decades, their entire lives. And that is just amazing. And I love that. The independence of it, Northern California is beautiful. But there was a dark, dark, dark underside. And I had a lot of naivety there too. I was thinking, okay, really conscious, progressive, enlightened, psychedelic people are going to go out to California and they're going to grow marijuana. And by the time I got there, there were like cartels hanging fish hooks at eye level all through the woods, pit bulls everywhere, which are cool, but not if they're fed gunpowder and trained to kill everyone. The first house I went to look at to buy, when we pulled up in the driveway, these rednecks came out and they're like, well, we get a lot of trespassers, but if we get one, we just feed them to the pigs. That's all we do. And I was like, okay, let's get in the car and get the fuck out of here, But that's how it was everywhere, I mean, murder was not really a big deal. One of the farms that I worked at, the year before, the trimmers cut the neighbor's head off, decapitated him because he didn't pay them on time. And they were living there. They brought the bloody clothes back to the house and stuff. Like, just, then this was like normal, Murder Mountain. If you guys watch Murder Mountain on Netflix, I knew all those people. Like, not some of the ones that were shot, but Murder Mountain was like 20 miles from where I lived, and it's true. People just kill people all the time, and no one calls the cops. Like the outlaw code. If you violate it, you're dead. And so there was a lot of murder, a lot of rape. There were more people go missing between Laytonville, California, and Arcata, California, than anywhere else in the United States, and it's only like 100 miles or something. It's like when you get to Garberville, the walls are plastered with missing person posters, completely insane. So I guess what I'm getting at is that on the one hand, I hate to see big business come in, and because there were a lot of good people too. Don't get me wrong, man. I mean, there were a lot of old hippies. The people that came, oh yeah, it was crazy, man. The people that originally came there had beautiful intentions. They were just wanting to free themselves from our bullshit consumer, zombie filled. I mean, you guys know what it's like. Of course they wanted to get away from it, and they did. I've seen old home movies of the original people that came and populated Humboldt County, and they were all naked building because they're, like nude with their tool belts, the only thing they're wearing, and they were all just kind and peaceful, and that's who started the cannabis scene in Northern California. But by the late 90s, early 2000s, the Discovery Channel and High Times Magazine had gone in and made it famous. And so the cartels started showing up, and people that just wanted money just for the sake of money. Of course, where there's marijuana, if it's illegal, there are other drugs. So people were hella high on everything under the sun. I mean, honestly, though, even with all the dangers and stuff, I would prefer that to like having to be a settled down yuppie somewhere. I mean, I really would. But of course, I'd probably be singing a different story if something had happened to me or. But another thing that was interesting about it is that we didn't really need the cops, because you didn't want to deal with the consequences of robbing your neighbor, or I mean, there was a pedophile in the neighborhood one time, and they tied him to a chair and squirted a vial of LSD down his throat and tortured him to death over the course of a week. So they just handled things themselves, I mean. But it was kind of unfortunate. There were a lot of innocent bystanders that would get caught up. I mean, grandfathers that were just going fishing, and people didn't know. People come from Utah to go fly fishing, and they don't know there's a rule that if you're by a river in California, you don't go more than a half mile away from the road or you're dead, period. Like, period. And if you walk into one of these gardens, there's no second chances. There's no like, oh, I'm sorry, I won't come back. No, they're not taking a chance. They're just going to kill you. And they've done it so many times that it's just not a big deal. I mean, putting people in wood chippers, and there are these giant pigs that live in the hills in Northern California that will eat a body gone, nothing, all the bones, everything. And so if they catch a trespasser, they would just kill him and put him out, and the pigs would take care of it. And with no body, no murder, I mean, it was crazy, man. It was really, really crazy. And there's a lot of it that I wish I could talk about, but I just won't. So if any of you guys out there are interested in growing, oh, and I mean, I left because it actually cost a lot of, oh, so it's still going on up there? There's still like outlaw growing and people getting killed and stuff? I mean, because that is crazy that I would say this, but no, I'm not even gonna say it. I mean, part of me doesn't want to see it die, I guess. I mean, all the violence and all of the lunacy and stuff, man. It was just still so good to see people that were totally free from the Babylon political shitstorm, that I almost think it's worth it, I mean, and it's not like, it's not like everyone's just getting slaughtered or something. It's not like that. And usually you have to do something stupid in order to, unless you're a girl. That's the problem, man. There was a lot of exploitation as well. There's a guy that I knew. You guys know the Georgia Guidestones, where they had supposedly the Illuminati has etched the the plan to depopulate the planet and all that stuff. His parents, and this is real, it's true. He's a total scumbag, but his parents own the land where the Georgia Guidestones are, and he told me that the guy that paid the contractors was signing the checks, R.C. Crucian, right? Like Rosie Crucian. and that he was super pissed because the guy left one of the zeros off of the stone, or he put too many. I can't remember which one it was, but according to this guy, if those are real, the number's not right. And the guy that commissioned them to make the guide stones was super flaming pissed off about it because it was expensive. Um, but anyways, that guy was going to start a shrimping company. Like this guy would seriously, and some of these guys are so out of touch, they will talk to a room full of hippies about this stuff. Um, oh yeah, man, depopulation is real. Population management has always been a concern of empire. It's so naive to think otherwise. If you look back to Lao Tzu, the books that have guided the I don't know what you call them, the empire builders, their protocol for centuries has included population management. That's why, you don't use contraceptives in Catholicism. They push these religions in places where they're breeding a lot of cheap labor, and now the Catholic Church is saying, oh no, it's okay, you can use condoms and be gay, because they're realizing that they don't, they don't need all the construction anymore, they don't need all the labor. So that, all of a sudden God has changed his mind, because the requirements of the empire have changed. That's really what it all is, and that's why you have, for example, Catholicism as the predominant belief system in a place where all the cheap labor comes from. That's by design. That's really, this has got, nothing to do with marijuana, really. Okay, so what? Man, we were talking about cannabinoids and their uses, and I just went on that crazy outlaw rant. Can we get back to CBDs? Yeah. But I wasn't done talking about THCV because it actually is really important as far as cannabinoids go. It is one of the most medically active aside from THC, and may actually be more so. It's very stimulating. This is why green crack is green crack. There are other strains, like I mentioned, Alaskan ice. There is a side effect from THCV that, aside from this terrible advice that it could reduce panic attacks, it definitely can cause panic attacks. I don't know who wrote this, but they were just lying. Stimulates bone growth. That actually is something that has been proven. Actually, you guys, don't look at leaf fly, because they're also saying that it is common in African strains, and that's not true either. It's almost exclusively found in Indonesian and maybe Thai strains, I think, from East Asia. So this is, I mean, unless I got bad information, but I don't think so, man. I mean, check on that one. And anyways, it doesn't really matter. At this point, you can do gas chromatography. Is that how you say it? Um, um, well, thank you, Zindra. Uh, what are we talking about? THCV. Okay, so here's the story. So this is one of the side effects of THCV that it will freak you out if you don't know what it is. So a friend of mine had grown this Alaskan ice, and this guy was a master grower. I mean, he grew a 22 or 27, I can't remember, foot blueberry. What was it? AK blueberry or something? I don't know, man. It was the um, yeah, I mean, it's a pure sativa thing, but it's pretty uncommon. I mean, and maybe now, but I don't think Durban poison actually has a lot of THCV. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. Um, and that's what one of the things they were saying on this page. Anyways, I got the strain from him, but he would give me like a grab bag. Like he would grow like 40 plants, which is not really what growers are supposed to do if they're, or not what you want to do if you're a commercial grower, because they require different feed ratios and they have different flowering times. And so this can kind of make things complicated. But he would grow all these different strains. So he gave me the THCV high Alaskan ice. My girlfriend and I smoked it, and we're laying in bed, and all of a sudden there's this, mushrooms do this as well. It could be for the same reason, but suddenly there was like this vibration that I could feel and hear, and it kind of felt like if you have an astral body, like have you ever had that, what do they call it, sleep paralysis, where you feel like you're levitating and then spinning around, but it's not really your physical body, although you can't really distinguish between the two at the time. Something like that. Like your astral body or your soul is being like ripped in half, and it kind of feels like, how it sounds when Velcro is like, but then cross that with like fingernails on a chalkboard. and all of a sudden I'm like, and I can hear it and feel it. And the first couple of times the first time I thought, oh, that was just some weird shit that'll never happen again, and it happened again. And the third time, my girlfriend says, "Did you hear that? I mean, did you feel or hear or what? What the fuck is going on?" And so it took us a second to figure out what had happened, or maybe we smoked it again the next night. But that's one of the weird, and it's not just us, by the way. I've heard this from other people. Um, it's just this. I don't know what the fuck it is with psilocybin. What Dennis McKenna theorized is that it is. Oh no, this isn't just theory. Actually, I think they have managed to record this somehow. But there is a vibration in the part of the brain with psilocybin specifically. It's the part of the brain that that deals with language, and so people will notice that your capacity to articulate stuff is enhanced with psilocybin. In fact, one of the symptoms of psilocybin poisoning that I experience a lot is that everything I say rhymes for like an hour straight, and I don't have to. I'm not trying to do it. It's not like I'm trying to like rap or something. It just like everything that comes out of my mouth is poetic and it all rhymes. And I don't. I'm not even doing it on purpose. So and it's really easy to if you get the dosage right to just flow with your thoughts and um, okay, Fernando. The other day when you told me that you were having your first LSD experience, I assumed that you had not had any psychedelic experiences. I didn't realize that it was just your first LSD experience. Um, um, so yeah, what I'm saying is maybe it's yeah, it's almost like a tremor in your internal body or something, man. It freaked me the fuck out. Um, so yeah, THCV, but I think that it's really an important one in part um, because people that need cannabis often have conditions that make them very tired, and like myself, I suffer from really severe mental fatigue and physical fatigue a lot, and so most of the time, smoking pot does not appeal to me at all. But if it's a pure sativa, particularly a land race that hasn't been hybridized, um, then it's a different story. And as far as like cannabis in general as a stimulant or a catalyst for creativity, I should have looked it up so that I could give you guys exactly the study or whatever. I know people are really fond of their facts these days, but if you want to take my word for it, I found a credible neuroscientist somewhere talking about how they did neuroimaging scans of people that had smoked cannabis, and the pattern that the scans exhibit. The way that he phrased it was, this is like literally the very definition of enhanced creativity. This pattern that we're seeing in the brain. So that's definitely, there are reasons to use cannabis. Like I was saying earlier, that the jazz musicians, they noticed that the guys that smoked cannabis were much better players than the ones that didn't, and it has the same kind of the the brain regions that don't normally communicate. That is happening more with cannabis, and I don't know that people have really looked into it, but I'm sure that the kind of like neuroplasticity and neurogenesis type stuff that occurs with other psychedelics occurs with cannabis as well. Although now that we're talking about CBD and CBN, I should mention that THC actually is a psychedelic when it's consumed alone. It's a stimulant, and so a lot of the sort of more narcotic effects are thought to come from other compounds, and also when tetrahydrocannabinol is when it oxidizes, it becomes CBD or CBN, and those have a more sedative effect. And also, some of these other cannabinoids or cannabinoids actually counteract the psychedelic effect of the cannabis, which for someone like me, that's totally undesirable. In fact, in case you were going to ask, my favorite strain of all time, which is not very popular and has never been very popular, but it is readily accessible. Um, well, it looks like our battery's almost gone, so we have a few more minutes. Um, um, well, okay, my favorite strain of all time is Barney's Farm LSD. And it's not the lemon sour diesel that people think of when you say LSD in association with marijuana. It's called LSD because the effect is like a mild LSD trip, and it's actually true. The problem is that Barney, I think, is a little bit cocky, and he doesn't feel like he needs to stabilize his strains. He doesn't feel that it's necessary because I guess he's thinking if you get 10 beans and you get one with that's the one you're looking for, good enough, and that's about how it is, unfortunately. If you get a 10 pack of feminized LSD seeds from Barney, 1 out of 10 usually has the characteristics of the LSD that I like. It's a very unhealthy plant. It's very susceptible to molds. It's very easy to overwater it. It's very picky about a pH. It's definitely not really for beginners, but it smells and tastes better than any weed that I have ever encountered. And uh, all boasting aside, and all honesty, in both California and Colorado, every single person or grower that I ever showed it to was like, wow, that's the best looking weed I've ever seen in my life. Out of the 300 plus strains that I've grown in my lifetime, it is the only one that I've ever seen. It produced so much resin that it's actually like it'll drip and glob together. And like sometimes you could see these little, I don't know why they would actually form almost cubes when they did this, which has to be some kind of chemical thing. But there would be like these little cube-shaped trichome blobs hanging off the leaves. Incredible resin content, and the effect of it is on your creativity without compromising your energy levels. Absolutely phenomenal. It's a Mazar E Sharif. Um, oh man, I can't remember the other. It's a Mazar cross, and that's definitely my absolute favorite. And so the reason we're kind of like making our way over to CBD, which is what Fernando requested that we discuss. I mean, there are so many cannabinoids, and I think that it's very likely that they all are useful for something. And I also think that these combinations of compounds that we find in a lot of these medicinal plants and their ratios are no coincidence. Nature knows what it's doing, you know? I mean, if you follow my channel, you're probably aware that it's not like I believe in God exactly, but to the idea that nature is blind and dumb and there's no intelligence that's sort of inextricably intertwined in the underlying operating systems, programming protocol. I think that that's just as insane as believing in like, old fairy tale religion God. And I think that a lot of these plants and the compounds that they contain and the ratios that they already naturally exist in are good evidence for that. And so CBD is one of the other of the most important medically of the cannabinoids, and it is the one. It's for two reasons. If you are a person that doesn't like the psychedelic effect of THC, strains that are high in CBD are going to counteract that psychedelic effect to some extent. It also has been shown to possibly enhance sexual pleasure, and there are strains like, oh God, what is it called? It's pink pistols, Kana Sutra, that are specifically bred to be aphrodisiac strains, and so they're not only high in CBD, but they're also high in THC because it's this entourage effect that is the best catalyst for an aphrodisiac. I would imagine. Well, it's not that I don't believe in God in any kind of like in that personal kind of sense. I do believe that there is that consciousness is the fundamental fabric of the universe, basically, and that it's not blind deterministic gobbledygook that's just randomly coagulated into all these complex systems. I think that's just ridiculous. But I don't believe in like a God that well, whatever. That's not the subject of this live stream. Um, what we're talking about is CBD, and so it's good for insomnia and anxiety, and a lot of people claim that fibromyalgia and a lot of pain, painful conditions that are not addressed well, at least by opioids and other classes of NSAIDs, inflammatory medicines. Um, so my battery is about to die, and I don't want to just drop off. CBN, cannabinoid, is also really important. But that's basically, my big advice. If you're using this stuff medically, you need to have knowledge of the terpenes as well as the cannabinoids, and then so that you can figure out how to correlate the ratios, to pick the right strain for yourself. And you can't really rely so much on the internet or your dispensary, because I can tell you with absolute certainty that a lot of these people are just making shit up. It's not based on research. They don't really care. They're just saying stuff because they're trying to sell stuff. So what you can do is look at actual chromatography, and look for yourself. Also, if you can learn to identify the terpenes by smell, then you can. Oh my God! I didn't tell you guys about the Jaguar thing. Okay, so this is the end. This is the end for real. So my son is named after basically Inca Nahuatl shaman, or a type of spirit that shapeshifts into either a wolf or a jaguar. And the first part is that the other day we were walking around in town and we ran into a Warani woman, and she said you should name his son should be I can't remember the Warani name, like Competi, which means jaguar, and that was crazy. But then he's only 17 months old, so it's not like he knows what a jaguar is. It's not that I've explained to him that you're named after a jaguar spirit. But he saw a picture of a jaguar in a book. I'm told, I didn't witness this myself, and he growled at it, and then he meowed at it, and then he kissed it. And so a couple weeks over here at Magia Verde, there's a painting of a jaguar and a shaman on a wall. And I told the story to a lady that was staying there, and she told me that when I walked across the bridge to go to the kitchen, while I was gone, Nagwal walked over to the jaguar and kissed it. And so, we've been observing this with every time he sees a jaguar, he definitely has like a lot of interest in it. And I mean, I guess that's understandable. A jaguar is cool, right? But still, it seems it's trippy. This is like his spirit animal, and he seems to know it instinctively and intuitively, which brings us back to the terpenes, because what I was going to say is that your body knows, and so people smell cannabis to choose the strain. And I think that what appeals to you is probably your body telling you that this is the terpene profile that you need for whatever it is that needs adjustment, and whatever systems in your body need to be brought into homeostasis. So one more time, guys, hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon if you can. You can make a one-time contribution to support our channel to the email. We accept Zelle and PayPal and Skrill. And thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. Have a great rest of your 420. And I'm scared. I don't know, Dogecoin, it was supposed to be Doge Day, and so far, nothing has happened. So if any of you guys are like me and you have a little bit of money in that one, good luck, man, because I'm afraid to look at our balance right now. All right, good night.